Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled FedEx Flight 705. This was on April 7th, 1994, and this is titled They Fought for Their Lives. Now, I had been a captain at this time for about 4 years, and, I welcomed jump seaters on board my aircraft, not thinking too much about it ever, not thinking that they would ever constitute a threat. And this accident, if you want to call it an accident, incident, changed that whole thing, that whole attitude of jump seaters. Now, this was a flight, FedEx flight going from Memphis, Tennessee to San Jose. It was carrying a bunch of electronic parts, and it was a DC-10, and they're having three crew members on it, and they had a deadhead passenger come up and want to go along. That happens a lot. People repositioning, going out to see friends, relatives, stuff like that. You don't think too much of it. You give them a little briefing, and away you go. But this was the jump seater from hell. Now, as this first came out, there were a lot of jokes about, yeah, we'll accept jump seaters, but we have certain restrictions. We're gonna tape you to the seat. That was funny for a while until the magnitude of this whole event became apparent as the details came out. Now, this jump seater gets on board and he's got a guitar case. Well, you don't think too much about a guitar case, right? I had crew members that would bring, electronic keyboards along. They would bring banjo. Now, the banjo, that actually did have a banjo in it, I know, because I could hear them through the walls in our motel room. So that was kind of a weapon there. But this guy uses this guitar case, and in the guitar case, he has three hammers. And he also has a spear gun as a backup. Actually, in the fight, he actually did get out the spear gun, and one of the guys grabbed the shaft of the spear gun. That was his backup. But let's talk about the crew just a second. We had a captain, Dave Sanders. He had worked for FedEx for 20 years, and he had been a Navy pilot during Vietnam War. The first officer was 42-year-old Jim Tucker, and he had worked for FedEx for 10 years, and he'd also previously been a Navy pilot for 12 years during the Vietnam War. And there was a flight engineer, 39-year-old flight engineer, Andrew Peterson, who had worked for FedEx for 5 years. So this is a crew of three. And this guy, Auburn Kellaway, I guess he had a good opinion of himself. He's a former Navy pilot and a martial arts expert, so he thought with the hammers he could disable all three crew members. Well, these guys put up one hell of a fight. Now, the whole reason Kellaway supposedly had this ill-conceived plan is he was going to fake an accident, collect $2.5 million in insurance for his relatives, and make it look like an accident because he was coming up for a hearing. Now, Kellaway was a Navy pilot, and the one thing airlines like about Navy pilots is you can verify their flight records because it's a government record, so you know that the flight records are appropriate. Apparently, he had padded some of his flight records, and they found out about it, and they were going to have a disciplinary hearing. And if you use something like that, you're out. That's it. You can't falsify, you can't lie, stuff like that. That just doesn't work in the airline world. So he was coming up against trouble. Now, yeah, we have that problem with civilian pilots because it's not as easy to verify their flight time. And we had this one pilot. She was subsequently fired. She was quite a case. She had a lot of P-51 time. Now you're probably going, wow, P-51 time. That's really impressive. I don't have any P-51 time. No, this was Parker 51 time, not what you might think of as the P-51. This was Parker 51 time. And her story was interesting, and you'd hear about it, secondhandly. She claimed to be a KC-135 pilot, a Cobra TAC helicopter pilot. And we're going, well, how did you do all that? And finally, roosters come home to roost, and she got kicked out. But okay, I digress. Anyway, so he gets on the airplane and he's going to be cool. Of course, you don't want anything on the cockpit voice recorder, so he goes and pulls out the circuit breaker. Well, good old engineer. Andy Peterson is on his toes, and he pushes the circuit breaker back in, thinking it had just either popped or been pulled, because you pull them at times just to shut it off so it doesn't run continuously. So you push it back in. So that kind of defeated that part of Callaway's plan. So they're taking off, and they're climbing through about 19,000 feet, and he goes back to his guitar case and gets out his hammer and comes and starts attacking the crew. All the members of the crew received multiple hammer blows. Peterson and Tucker, the first officer, suffered fractured skull. Peterson's temporal artery was severed. These guys were severely injured. They never actually were able to regain flight status because of the severity of their injuries. And just one heck of a battle ensued. Now, Tucker, the first officer, was the one who ended up flying the airplane, trying to maintain control. The rest of the crew was back there fighting with Callaway. Now, there had been a thought one time, about defeating a hijacker using aggressive maneuvering, and Tucker sure did. He pitched the airplane sharply up to 15 degrees. He rolled it on over, upside down, almost 140 degrees. Now, the thing that's interesting in this, he hit a speed of 450 knots. Now, the VMO, maximum velocity on the DC-10. This was a Dash 30 that I had flown as a co-pilot many times. Your VMO is 350 knots, and he's doing 460. Well, the whole thing about VMO, that's your maximum airspeed. Several things determine it. It can be structural effects. I knew on every aircraft, like on the F-15, the front windshield could start to melt due to heat. The inlet temperatures on the F-4 would get high. The T-38, it was the forward canopy latch that could fail if you exceeded 710 knots equivalent airspeed. So it was good to know what the issue was, but for the most part for transport aircraft, the issue is flutter. And in flight test, you'll take it 15% on and determine that you don't have any flutter issues, because you can have situations where you exceed VMO, and MMO has Mach issues. Now, they got into what's known as Mach tuck. Now, when I was a new fighter pilot in the A-37, the instructor goes up and he says, "Hey, I'll show you about crossing the needles." Now, anybody who flew T-37s know there's a barber pole for Mach, and there's an airspeed needle. And if you cross the needles where you go past the Mach limit, you can get what's known as Mach tuck. You get airflow, transonic airflow. The air has to flow, and I'm digressing here, but I think this is important. The air has to flow faster over the top of the wing to generate lift. So you're indicating, subsonic speeds, but the airflow over the top of the wing can be supersonic. And like on a 27, when you're going fast, you could actually see shock waves out there. But what happens on the elevator? Now, supersonic aircraft have all movable stabilizers, because when a shock wave forms, it blanks out what's behind it. Well, on a normal subsonic aircraft where you have the horizontal stabilizer and you have an elevator, if you get a shock wave on that horizontal stabilizer, you start blanking out the elevator and things don't work. So we're in the A-37. It's got a lot of power. It's got a third more power on one engine than the T had on two engines, because you got the J-85s off the T-38 in there. I'm digressing on my digressing. But anyway, you got a lot of power, so you can get into a dive nicely. So he's demonstrating this dive. The bottom of our practice area that we're not supposed to go out of is 10,000 feet, and we're going down, and he's demonstrating you can't pull out. Well, that was very good, but now it's time to recover, and the only way to recover is to slow down. So in the process of this great demonstration from my instructor, he pulls the power back. We drop the speed brakes and that, but we shoot out the bottom of the area. We go down to 8,000 feet in the recovery out where we're not supposed to be. But this is the effect of a mock tuck, and this guy got into it. And the fact that he was able to abuse this aircraft so violently, I mean, there's a lot of things you can say bad about the DC-10, but boy, this thing held together. Although it sustained $800,000 worth of damage. But okay, let's get back to the story. They were fighting this guy all the way to the ground virtually. They brought the airplane in. They got vectors back. They request armed intervention. The police SWAT team came on board and took this guy out, and they took the guys to the hospital. And I'm not going to show them, but there are plenty of bloody pictures of the pilots, and none of them were able to regain commercial flight status after this. But something that was done, and this is super. They received the Airline Pilots Association Gold Medal for heroism. And ALPA has been around for over 75 years, and there's the 3 pilots listed. And this isn't a big list. This has to be a unanimous vote of the Executive Council. So this award is not given out lightly. There's plenty of air safety awards that are handed out every year, but this award is not given out lightly. These guys went through just an absolute horrific event. Well, the aircraft was repaired. It went back on flight status, and but it was retired, and it's stored now out at Victorville Airport. That was the old George Air Force Base when I was out at Edwards. It's just east of there, and it's just placed in storage now. So that's the horrific tale of an individual who tried to kill 3 other pilots in an attempt to fake his death. And oh, by the way, he's currently in prison, and with the federal law, you don't have any chance of parole. So Kellaway will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting and informative.